Hey guys, Andrew here, and I'm here to talk to you today about Building Information Modeling, or BIM, and why we would procure a project or deliver a project using BIM over traditional methods or using traditional software. So as you can see, I have a 3D model here, and there's certain things that we can take instantly from it. We can take the material palette that's been utilized in the project. So for instance, the color of the doors versus roof versus gutter versus this stone feature wall here, and versus the cladding over here, which is a visual aspect of a 3D model. We can also look at a 3D model and look at things like shadow and sun. So for instance, I'm changing the time of day here, and I can understand how the sun interacts with this particular project, the way that it's been set out according to the north angle. So this is still information that's associated with the project. So the month of the year and the time of day all have relevant information that would be considered as part of a BIM model. Now we can turn our shadows off and on, and we can look around the project in a little bit more detail. And as we look around this project, we can see what it's built out of, how it's built, and we can also look at how it works with the site. And as you can see here, this block is actually sloping towards the back. And in some instances, they may cut the soil and fill the soil and build the house level, yet for feasibility reasons, in many cases, they might use a hybrid approach. So in this case, they're using bearers and joists to actually suspend the slab or the floor above the ground to make it more feasible or easier to build. It could also be for circulation reasons or storage under the house. There's a lot of reasons why we would actually build a project on a slab or up on bearers and joists. And we can look around this project, and visually we can instantly understand what and why. But we can also understand how. So for instance, all this model's been drawn in a product called PlusDesignBuild, which is basically BIM and virtual design and construction software combined. And the reason we did it was because for my construction company, it was really important that I could employ people to draw or design, but from a builder's perspective, I needed to know how we were going to put that project together. And as you can see, as I zoom around this project, we have things in here like air conditioning, which is say here, and we can figure out how this air conditioning will work with the roof layout and structure. You'll also notice that it actually has some red items here. Now, essentially, these are signifying load, or how much weight is going to be put in a particular region of the model, and then the engineer can figure out whether the footings or the concrete is strong enough to hold that load, and they can move things around according to requirements. So this is helping with the engineering of the project at the same time as enabling us to figure out how we would go about building this efficiently. You can also see drainage and everything else that's associated with that model. Now, what's the difference between this type of model and say a model that was just done in SketchUp or Revit? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all here. And with SketchUp, if we were to draw, say, a rectangle down here, we might make it, say, 10 meters by 10 meters. That's 1 meter, 10 meters. Go enter. We now have a 10 meter by 10 meter rectangle. And with SketchUp, we could offset that. So we might say offset here, and we might say the wall thickness is, let's say, 250 millimeters. Enter. And I could pull those walls up, say 2740 millimeters, and now I would actually have what symbolizes a wall. However, the issue with this is it's just geometry. It really doesn't have anything inside of it. And to show you that, what I would do is I would actually cut a section through these walls. So let's have a look at the project on the right has been drawn with PlusDesignBuild. And we'll just turn that section off. Okay. Actually has the framework and everything associated with it. It has the internal linings. It has a cavity there for the brickwork. And basically, it has what's required to build it. It's more of a virtual design and construction model. However, when we're using modeling like SketchUp or even Revit or ArchiCAD, they actually just put two external sides of the wall so that we can have it as a 250 wide wall, right? So it's still 250 wide and it's still the height of the wall, yet the information associated with it isn't there behind the scenes, and that makes it very difficult for us to do a feasibility study. I'll quickly touch on what a feasibility study is. If a client comes to us and says, hey, we want to put a 4-bedroom home on a property that's located in X location, we could draw it up in SketchUp or we could draw it up in Revit or ArchiCAD, but we would have a lot of troubles actually getting a bill of quantities to be able to purchase things and to install them in the project and work out the cost. So drawing this in SketchUp really didn't enable that to happen. It would mean I would have to create a set of drawings, send them across to a builder or a subcontractor or a supplier, maybe say Bunnings and a carpenter, to give me a price. However, when we looked at this structural model over here, this is what would enable us to get that price. So if we looked at this SketchUp model over here and I explained why we would use BIM and virtual design and construction software like PlusDesignBuild, I would actually say, well, if we go back to all here and I chose a wall tool and chose wall, and I can put in the height of my wall, and you'll notice that everything is a picture on the left hand side here. That's the top of the windows and doors. We could choose a construction method, so I might say in here masonry veneer, and that is symbolized by these images here. We might say double masonry, or we could say any construction method out of here, and these are all the main construction methodologies all the way around the world. So I'm going to choose masonry veneer in this instance here, and I'm going to trace around these walls, right? And I'll just leave it half in, half out, and I'll just do 2 walls. So now I've drawn 2 walls. We can zoom in here, and if I run another section through there, we'll see what's behind the walls. So we're going to go here and we're going to add in a section, and we'll add on that downpipe again. And as we look at the wall, you'll notice that it now has structure inside of it. Right. So this is the SketchUp walls. Just hide that. And this is the PlusSpec wall. And that PlusSpec wall has a texture on the face, and that can be changed to anything that was required by the client. So we might have to do color selections and say, well, the client has chosen a different brick. We can go back to our wall, and it's parametric, which means that we can change the materials it's created out of, the construction method, and everything associated with this particular model. So we'll just choose, say, this one here and go submit. And now we have a yellow brick on there, and we could change that a million times. We could also add in things like windows. So we can click on that wall and we can go right click, or we can go up to windows up here, and we can essentially add a window or a door. So if I add a window into this wall, essentially what will happen is that we'll add the window, but it will also cut the structure. Right, you can see there that it's actually cut the structure, and that SketchUp model is just over top of it. I'll delete that. And you can see that now it's actually started to signify where load is. So in the other model we spoke about load path before, we can see that there would be load there because this is holding more weight. So smart virtual design and construction such as PlusDesignBuild enables you to automate what it is that we're going to build. It also enables us to show our customers how that window would go, where it would be placed, and if we turn our shadows on, how much light would come through that window as we drew it. Right. It's a better way to communicate, and I think the building information modeling and virtual design and construction software enables you to better communicate with your customer, with your subcontractor. So we look at our structural. It enables you to associate price. So if we said let's do a bill of quantities on these particular items here, I'll bring that over. Right, so everything inside of those walls is there. So if I looked at my framing, it's going to tell me how much framing is required. If I looked at my cladding or my bricks, it tells me how many bricks are required. And you'll notice that we can associate price with these items, and therefore we can get an understand the feasibility of the project before we actually lodge it into council. So once we have a project that's feasible to build for the client, We can then look at it in things like elevation. So up here we have a scene tool, which basically will generate things for council submissions, so construction documentation, and we can look at it in a traditional style. For instance, an elevation, whether that be in traditional black and white, or whether we're going to actually have that elevation in, let's close this door up here, we're going to have it in color, multiple elevations, and all of this information would now create a documentation set that we would put into our local authority or council for approval. And it could be a building application, or it could be a development application or development approval. And essentially the way we would do that is we would use a construction document set. So we could choose a paper size, so we might say A3 paper size. We could choose a template, which might have all of our headers and information. We could choose whether it's going to have dimensions inside of it, and we could choose what we wanted to have on each page. So we might say on the next page I wanted to have my elevation, and we might have multiple elevations on a page, so we might say 2 elevations on a page, and then we can create some construction documentation that we can utilize for submission. We can also give to builders on site who don't have access to the 3D model. So guys, I hope that helps you understand why we would utilize BIM and why we would utilize BIM software or virtual design and construction software such as PlusSpec to create a project not only for feasibility but for construction and also for communication with subcontractors and clients. Hope it helps out, guys. If you've got any questions, ask them in the video below or consult your university teacher. Cheers. Bye.